where do you plant campuses? I've already kind of tipped my hand to this, but where are we looking, Randy?
Yeah, so for us, the very first thing that we do is we have a software called Maptive that basically will put a dot map of every group, well, basically whatever you feed it. So I feed it all the groups that we have, where are the groups meeting, every address that we have in our database, where are they coming from? And the thought behind that is that groups are what actually create campuses for us. It's like, man, if we've got a bunch of groups in this area, that's probably going to be a pretty good location to plant a campus. Now, in the long term, that campus is going to create more groups,
right,
and you're going to be able to continue to expand beyond that. But we don't have a if you build it, they will come mindset. We have where are they coming from? Let's build something there. That's the way that we think about it.
Right.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
All right. Hey, guys. Welcome to the Breaking Barriers podcast. My name is Pastor Andrew, and I'm here today with Pastor Randy. Really excited for today's discussion on the Multisite Playbook. We're just going to jump 30,000 feet out and look down. Randy is kind of our resident guru when it comes to really all things multi-site. You've just been living this world for a long time with us and basically have been there all the way from our first campus through our fifth. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to do is zoom out because there are many people who ask us, I'm surprised, a lot of the questions that we get in the Breaking Barriers world are around multi-site. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, totally. You can see it all over the Facebook group, which if you're not in the Facebook group, you should be in the Facebook group.
Yeah, a lot of people trying to figure out multi-site. And, we make a big distinction. I want to just say this on the very front end. We're going to do the why, where, when, and who of multi-site. So that's what we're going to do here for a few minutes in this podcast. But I do think it's worth, and we did a podcast on this, but I think it's worth us just saying when we're talking about a campus, we could not be talking about something more different than a church. Yeah. It is not, we are not taught, we don't, we have friends that do it differently, and that's fine. And I would go to their church. I'm not saying that. Yeah. But for us, I think it's a little bit short-sighted to start to confuse the conversation between campusing and church planting.
Right.
It's tempting because all of a sudden our multiplication numbers go up.
Right.
For example, Mercy Hill has planted 6 churches, parented them. I mean, we've partnered with dozens, but we've planted from in the house 6 churches, and but we've got 5 campuses. From a multiplication level, it'd be a lot more appealing for me to say we've multiplied 11 times.
Yeah.
We don't see it like that.
Yeah.
It's like, man, when you start lowering the bar, what's going to end up happening is that, in my opinion, that first generation is going to do both. Mm-hmm. The second generation is just going to campus.
Yeah.
And then when that main thing dies, whenever that is, whether it's 50 years or 100 years, what's going to happen to all the little arms?
Yeah.
Because you did not create a starfish, you created a spider and called it a starfish.
Yeah.
I'm being a little forward on this, but that is sort of my thoughts on it. You were not on that podcast with me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that a lot. And like you said, I don't necessarily have any issue with it. I would go to those churches as well. But I think the point that you're raising, to go a little bit deeper into the spider and the starfish, you cut a starfish apart and you get a new starfish.
Right.
With a spider, you pull a spider apart and you've got a spider that's pulled apart.
Right.
It's not true multiplication. Right. So for us, I like the point you make about long term. Mercy Hill is gonna die one day. If the Lord doesn't come back before then, it's gonna die. Just like every church before us, and just like every church after us. And the question is that legacy of church planting going to live on? And we would say yes.
Yeah.
Because they're not connected to us in any other way than just collaboration, and they're part of our family.
Right.
They got their own pastor, their own elder board.
Yeah.
They're their own separate entity.
Yeah, if we die, they do a 3-minute memorial because they love us.
Yeah.
Because, they were planted by us.
Right.
And then they move on with their life.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not true with the campuses. If the directional elders of Mercy Hill went rogue, if God forbid a plane went down and multiple of our lead pastors died, there could be a scenario which the kind of the head dies, so to speak.
Yeah.
The legs are probably not going to make it, and if they do, they're going to spin off and they're going to be something else. They're not going to just be the same spider. They're going to do something else.
Yeah.
For us, we think about it like this. Our legacy is wrapped up in the starfish. Mm-hmm. That's church planting.
Yeah.
But the way that we get there is through the spider, which for us is a big growing multi-site church.
Right. Yeah.
And I think anybody can think about it like that, whether you're in a rural part of wherever and you got 200 people, or whether you're, think about, man, the legacy for after I'm gone is not how big this thing is. It's how many things came out of it.
That's right.
But how I'm going to get there, remember our tagline, right, is like, man, you can grow without going, but you can't go without growing.
That's
right? So the tagline is, man, you got to focus on that spider if you want to get to the starfish.
Right.
And for us, that idea of a spider for us is a multi-site movement. We feel like a multi-site church. So you don't it doesn't have to be, guys can grow a church and it never has to be more than even one service. There are people that do that. But for us, man, you multi-service, you multi-site, and that's the way that we grow in a way that also shapes our sending culture, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. All right, so let's talk about why, when, where, and who of multi-site. If you're even in this realm of thinking, or you want to set some goals around when you could do your first multi-site. Randy, what are the different reasons why people do this, and how do you triage them? How do we pick? We all know Cynic, right? It all starts with the why. So let's talk about some of the reasons guys do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, as you've already mentioned. I think what's common when we talk to people kind of in our stream is a lot of people are dealing with very pragmatic growth issues. Man, we're out of space. We're running 4 services, 5 services, 6 services. We feel like we got to do something else. We can't build this massive building right now, so we got to figure out what is our next growth step. And so that's very common for us, for somebody to come to us and say, hey, we're thinking about multi-site, and it's birthed out of growth. And I think that's the right time to be thinking about something like that, especially if you've already multiplied services, which is the first thing that we recommend people to do. But I think some other things for us, some of this has been in our DNA from the very beginning, coming from the Summit Church, and some of it we've just kind of clarified over time as we've kind of seen what was happening, But I think about, man, just the missional side of, the why. It's like, man, we have noticed, and we've talked about this, I think, on this podcast before, the people who end up going on church plants, most of them did not come from our broadcast location. Mm-hmm. They came from one of our campuses. Well, why? The why is because they've already said yes to a step of discomfort. They've moved from comfort. It's comfortable to be at the main campus. I'm going to take a step away from comfort to discomfort. And they've already said yes to that.
Yeah.
They've said yes to planting a new group. They've said yes to some sort of multiplication step. And so for us, there's a missional side of this and there's a multiplication side of this. I would say some of the more missional stuff, we use the line for years when we've been talking about this. You've used the illustration of, hey, a church alive is worth the drive. If the church is growing, man, people, maybe they'll drive 45 minutes.
Right.
That works for people who are already a fan of church.
Fans do crazy stuff.
That's exactly right. But, man, what about your neighbor who is not a fan of church yet? Is it easier to invite them to a campus that's 10 minutes away or to the broadcast location that's 45 minutes away?
Right.
So there's a real missional aspect to this. The idea that we're taking the church to you instead of asking you to come to us.
Right.
I think the other, to just double click on the multiplication side of things, I think there's probably no greater leadership factory than multi-site church.
Right.
And we have seen this over and over and over again. If you want to raise up leaders in your church and you've got that critical mass and that momentum, there's a compelling why when it comes to just raising up leaders. You're raising up think about it, every staff position, not every staff position, but every campus level staff position that you have, the leaders that are leading teams at your broadcast location, creating a new campus creates all of these opportunities for people to step into. And so we have a strong leadership culture at Mercy Hill Church. Part of that, I think, flows downhill just from who we are, at the leadership team level. But part of it is because we've created so many opportunities for people to be called up and step into that leadership vacuum.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a huge.
Yeah, if you asked me, if you said, hey, man, why do you guys multi-site? I think I would say because it solves a growing problem and sets a sending culture.
That's right.
All right, so it solves something and it sets something.
Yep.
The growing problem, I think it solves for practical reasons. Really, what it comes down to is cheap real estate.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's like, man, especially churches that are in the beginning phase of this, because what you're going to do is you're going to either find a merger situation or you're going to rent something.
Right.
Newsflash, there is no building in your city to rent where 3,000 or 4,000 people can go worship.
Yeah.
There's none of that. That doesn't exist, right? But there are buildings in your city that can be upfitted where 400 or 500 or 600 can go worship, right?
That's right.
So now, eventually, you get to the place where some of the the giga churches are, which we're not there, where it's like, yeah, they're building their campuses, a lot of them like with cash, and they're set up for 3,000 people in the jump, which is awesome. I mean, just what an incredible thing for the kingdom. But for us, I think we backed our way into it a little more pragmatically than that. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I remember at one point early, you had done some work around putting a dollar sign per seat. And it was like, man, if you go build the mega campus, versus multi-site in what we're talking about, Class C, real, business park, a church that's dying, we could, I can't remember what it was. Maybe you do, but it was like substantially less money per seat. To do it this way.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but just thinking back and even thinking through recent stuff that if you're going to build a building from the ground up, you're going to pay, the dollar amount per person is probably going to be at least double, if not more.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about what we've paid for renovations of some Class C space versus what we've paid for a ground up build out. Yeah.
And it's funny to me because it seems like, because you're dealing with like, stuff that's renovated, in the building world, a lot of times building smaller is more expensive. You see these tiny house communities or something where you're like, dude, that thing's 500 square feet and it costs $90,000, Whereas when you scale up, things get cheaper. Sometimes in the church world, I feel like it's the opposite way. Not literally because you're not looking at the same materials, but just generally when you think about like, man, a building for 500 versus a building for 5,000, the building for 5,000 actually probably costs a lot more per seat.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just with everything, all the regulations and all the stuff that you got going on. So I think that, for me, solves a growing problem, but all, in a cheaper way, but it sets the sending culture and DNA. And I think that is so good. This is actually just a moment of vulnerability for us. Our discussions have been right now that we've lost some of that. Right now. We're not using that language enough with our people to remind them, hey, we campus for the mission. It's not simply an overflow. It is actually more strategic if you are living in McLeansville to invite somebody to the Northeast campus than it is to come to the Ridge.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at right now. And I think some of that is just the nature of, man, we got in this new broadcast location and it's been a long process to kind of get us here. And so rightly our focus has been there, but you're right, man. We've been talking at this leadership level about working some of that language and DNA back into the culture. Yeah,
for sure. And I think the other part of the why, and then we'll move on, for me is, we have always been a church that believes success leaves clues.
Yeah.
And so we're just looking.
Yeah.
And we're like, man, if the Unstuck group says 54% of churches that are over 1,000 in attendance are multi-site. And it's like, hey, man,
might be something to it.
Yeah, if half of them are doing this philosophy, and you can say, well, the other half are not doing it. So it's like a coin flip. It's like, no, the other half are probably doing a ton of different stuff.
Yeah.
Ton of different philosophies. The multi-site a lot of times ends up kind of hanging together.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of leans a little more towards a brand, And so anyway, we just feel like, hey, success leaves clues. We want to grow. We want to go.
Yeah.
So we feel it's a good opportunity for us. All right. Second thing is not just the why, but the when.
Yeah.
And even with the Unstuck group saying, it's like there is sort of a when to this. Some of it is an attendance goal. When should churches really be thinking about multi-site, Randy?
Yeah, I think the principle that I've used in coaching people is, man, you got to be stable and you got to be able. Man, if you're barely paying the bills and you think this is the thing that's going to save us, that's probably not a wise move. Right. For us, we kind of had this internal goal. We want to reach 1,000 people. And we didn't even, we're having discussions about it internally, but we didn't go public with anything around that until we had hit that marker because we felt like, man, this is a good base. This is critical mass. If we're going to send 500 people out to this campus, which is typically what we launch a campus with, man, we got to have the critical mass, you for people who are left behind. So I think being stable and then being able, having the vision, I think that was another key piece. Again, man, we owe so much just to you being on staff at the Summit and kind of the DNA that you brought over from being a part of the Summit Church, like having the vision for that, like having sort of a mindset and having the right language around that. Like, I think that was so important in those early days, because to most people who are coming to your churches, unless they've come from a big city, I mean, we're kind of in a mid-sized city in North Carolina, they may not have any context for that. But for us to be able to lace that missional language in was huge. But yeah, I would say number one guiding principle, man, be stable and be able. It's not something that's going to save you if you're in a financial crisis. It's actually going to cost you some money.
Right. Oh,
but there's long-term gains out of that.
Yeah. So maybe you're probably going to struggle with this because you remember where this came from. But it's easy to outkick your coverage here.
Yes, I do. Right. Remember where that came from.
That's a famous between me and Randy kind of Michael Fletcher quote we heard him give one time. But that idea is like, man, when you start multi-site, that even the very idea of multi-site, you're in a prime position to outkick your coverage.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about just what you're able to do now versus what, you know, if you think about it 6 months from now, was it something that put you at risk?
Yeah.
Because you're not maybe immediately getting a return on the financial part of it or the people part of it right at first. I think the other thing that's good to remember in this discussion is we use a general principle of 1,000 adults. Mm-hmm. You know, we just say, hey man, that doesn't mean that a church can't be stable and under 1,000 adults. Right. 1,000 adults puts you in the top, 1% of all. I mean, I get that. Yeah. But we kind of look at it and say that is probably a good number, you know, to be able to, like you're saying, be able to move people out. And I was going to give context on that. So the context on that for us was from Jim Tomberlin. And we were thinking about multi-site. This was year 2, maybe year 3. And we were thinking about it backwards. We were thinking about it like a church plant, right? So we were thinking about where do we not have people coming from, wrong.
Right. Yeah. Where
is there the most missional need, wrong.
Right.
Now, that's a great discussion to have, but not for multi-site.
Right.
And then, you know, I can't remember what the other one was. Maybe, you know, do we have a leader? Which I guess that would be the same way. But now we look at the opposite. We're like, hey, we're trying to find where are people coming from?
Yeah.
Where, you know, do we have leaders coming from? Which we're going to talk about that. But the big thing is not to multi-site until you're at that kind of 1,000 mark, because if you send them out, you know, are you going to have, like you're saying, a stability there? Yeah. And I remember Tomberlin really challenged me. It was a leadership network thing, and he said, number one, you're thinking about it like a church plant backwards. You know, you're thinking about where the people are not rather than where they are.
Right.
And then the second thing he said was, how close to you guys are 1,000? And I think we were 800 maybe. It was probably our year 2, so we were probably, you know, we had hit 1,000. We were probably running 800 or something, and he really challenged me on that. And we just said, man, we're going to wait.
Yeah. I think another part of the stability side of things is the systems. You know, and we didn't get this 100% right, but when you think about multiplying a campus, you are multiplying a campus. So every system that you have existing, if it's a bad system, you're multiplying that bad system.
Right.
And like I said, y'all, we didn't do this perfectly. If I knew then what I knew now, we would have done some things. We'd have had way much more clarity on everything. But I think that's a part of the stability. Like, are your systems a wreck where you're at right now? You know, and do you have that thinking of, man, whatever we have here is what we're multiplying there. So if it's a mess here, it's probably going to be a mess there. Now, that shouldn't stop you. Systems are always going to lag behind growth, but it is something I think to be aware of when it comes to being stable.
We've all heard the story of the church who did a multi-site across town and it didn't work out.
Right.
And a lot of times I think that we look at that and we would say they just weren't ready.
Right.
You know, they took a youth pastor and somebody who could play guitar and went into some high school and tried to see if it would work.
Right.
And, you know, they didn't make a huge bet. They didn't send hundreds of people out. They sent a small team.
Yeah.
And, man, it just way overtaxed the team. It way overburdened everybody, and it was not really set up for success.
Yeah.
Most of the time when I've seen that, the church was not at 1,000 before they did it.
Yeah.
You know, there's some principle that we've used. Some people say the opposite. I've actually been rebuked by some of my mentors on this. You know, people talk about bullets before cannons. We sort of talk about it like, man, if you shoot the cannon, it'll work.
Right.
You know, like, you know, you just keep shooting the cannon, it will work.
Yeah.
But a lot of people kind of like test the water. The campus is not something you could test the waters with.
Yeah.
And you're way more apt to want to test the waters if you're not really stable and able.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
All right, third of 4. Where do you plant campuses? I've already kind of tipped my hand to this, but where are we looking, Randy?
Yeah, so for us, the very first thing that we do is we have a software called Maptive that basically will put a dot map of every group, well, basically whatever you feed it. So I feed it all the groups that we have, where are the groups meeting, every address that we have in our database, where are they coming from? And the thought behind that is that groups are what actually create campuses for us. It's like, man, if we've got a bunch of groups in this area, that's probably going to be a pretty good location to plant a campus. Now, in the long term, that campus is going to create more groups,
Right.
and you're going to be able to continue to expand beyond that. But we don't have a if you build it, they will come mindset. We have where are they coming from? Let's build something there. That's
Right,
the way
right.
that we think about it.
Right. I think that's so good, man. You know, you think about a church plant the opposite. You think about a church plant, you think need first.
That's right.
But with a campus, you're thinking way more about where are people coming from. And that goes back to the very first thing that I said about it solves a growth problem. The problem with trying to plant churches to solve a growth problem is that you're using a multiplication solution for a growth problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, the church planting thing normally is, man, we're going to send people to where we don't have people coming from. Well, when you do that, you're de facto going to have a way lower launch team.
Yeah.
You know, so let's just play it out. Like, let's say you got a church of 500 people, 1,000 people, whatever it is, and you're going to launch a campus. Well, you can send 300, 400, 500 people because it's the same thing. You're sending them to a place where they're already coming from with the same package.
Yep.
They come to your church for a reason, man.
That's right.
They like the brand. They like what you're doing. They like your potential, you know, individual gift matrix as a church. It jives with them. That's why they're coming.
Yeah.
So when you go plant a new thing that is a new campus, but it's still the same thing, it's part of the spider.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, man, I'm in.
Yeah.
But for us, and we've seen this even on our own city, we just planted our sixth church in our own city. And, you know, the launch team was 35 adults maybe.
Yeah.
If we'd have launched a campus in the very same, you know, kind of time frame and all that, the launch team would have been 500.
Yeah.
It's so you can't say, well, we're growing, we're out of room, we're going to plant a church.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the church is going to take 1%, not even, you know, of the congregation.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, or maybe 2. I don't know, but they're not. It's not nearly going to be. Man, we're going to be able to move 500-600 people in one shot, right?
Totally. Yeah, and that's what we've seen consistently. I mean, with pretty much all of our campuses, with the exception of Northeast.
Yeah.
And Espanol, I mean, we've tried to hit that 400 to 500, you know, seats mark, knowing that we're going to launch with 2 services, create all those leadership opportunities, and have that critical mass.
And it's funny you say the groups. You know, the groups drive where the campus is planted. The campus in turn drives the group's numbers.
Yeah.
That's just a really sharp way to say it. Groups create campuses. Campuses create groups. For us, that's actually going to lead to us probably within the next year thinking about another campus a mile down the road from the Ridge.
Yeah.
Because that's just where most of our people are coming from. The Ridge is already filling up.
Yeah.
Our new campus, and so we're going to be looking at the Northridge campus.
Yeah.
You know, and hoping the same thing happens, that the groups will create that campus. The campus will then in turn create groups.
That's right.
It's good. All right, last thing. Man, who do we recruit? Who goes to the campuses?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking back to kind of our story. For context, I was the first campus pastor at our first satellite location, the Clifton Road campus, back in 2016. I remember the conversation you and Bobby had with me, man, very flattered, very self-aware that I had a lot of growing to do, and grateful that you guys were able to invest in me and kind of take that next step. But I think it kind of starts with, if you've got the strong, compelling vision, if you have everything we've talked about so far, you know, you've got the why, you've got all that stuff, man, you got to find that person, and that person needs to be a person of influence. They need to be a strong leader. And I would say that it matters especially with your first campus. I remember having conversations with Bobby in the early days saying, hey, man, this is a fragile thing. This is new for us. This is our first one. We're going cannons before bullets. We got to get it right, you know? Mm-hmm. And so having that strong leader who understands the culture of the church, who's going to be able to do the same thing you're doing at your broadcast location, but just in a different place in the city, someone who's got relational connection and buy-in from the rest of the campus. I think it starts with that campus pastor kind of being the most important hire for that campus. Yeah. But then once you've built out sort of the staff team, and we would say, man, yeah, start with a campus pastor. If you're going to launch in the 400 to 500 number, we would also have somebody on staff for kids, for worship, for guest experience, and operations type
They're not
stuff.
all full-time.
Not all full-time, correct. Most of them part-time.
Right.
But you want to staff it for success. Again, cannons before bullets. If we throw over a campus pastor who's given 10 extra hours, and we got a worship leader who's already stressed because he's doing things at the main location,
right.
We're not setting that thing up for success. And that's one of the things that was the greatest joy for me, you know, in that process, was having the full weight of the church behind me to say, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it the right way. Yeah. So let's raise up an incredible launch team. So it starts with that leadership team level, but then it's that leader's job to just go start recruiting. Start filling in all these teams that we're trying to multiply, that we're trying to replicate from our broadcast location. If we have a kids team over here, we need a kids team over there. If we have a parking team over there, we need a parking team over here.
Right.
I remember Gary was the associate campus pastor, which was super helpful in that first launch. But just so many coffee meetings, so many lunches, casting vision for what the campus was going to be, getting the right people in the right seats, building out that team so that we had an organized launch team that was clear on the vision, clear on the mission, clear on the why, clear on all of that stuff, and ready to roll when the time came. So I think the who is really, really important. And the kind of the fishing hole for us and all of that was those groups that were identified near that campus.
For sure, man. And then just thinking about the campus pastor profile, which we're not going to get into right now, but just understanding that person needs to be a leader, man, a builder and a leader. Mm-hmm. I've been talking to our campus pastors now about just what does it mean to be an example to the flock, what does it mean to be somebody that they want to follow?
Yeah.
And it's not just, man, I know the Bible.
Yeah.
It's way more than that. There's a passion to it. There's a logic to it. There's an ethos to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of this idea of character and authenticity. And, the way I keep talking to them, I'm like, man, you just got to be that guy.
Yeah.
You got to be him. That's what the kids would say.
That's right.
But you really got to be someone who people want to follow.
Yeah.
Not just because of what they say and how smart they are, but because of who they are.
Yeah.
And that's just an important piece of the whole thing. And then for the launch team, we open it up to the whole church though.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a bunch of meetings. I mean, people will have launch
we
meetings.
did for 9 months. We did campus interest meetings just to kind of educate people on what this campus was going to be, or it was a multi-site interest meeting. We were introducing
them. That was before we had done the whole
for our first, we just had a series of meetings introducing our church to the concept of multi-site. Why is it important? Kind of a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today was formulated. I remember sitting down with you and trying to get some of that stuff on paper. But then campus interest meetings. Hey, if this is interesting to you at all, if you want to be sent to another campus, man, come to the meeting. And then it was my job and your job in that meeting and the rest of my team to convince them, man, this is why this is the next best step for you. This is why you need to be a part of this thing.
Right.
So
yeah, that's great, man. And we try to say, whatever you can build on that launch team, you're probably going to launch with about 3 times that number.
Every single one, it's been almost.
So we would like to see a launch team of at least 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with Clifton, we were 170 or something like that, and launched with over 500. So
great, man. Cool.
Incredible.
All right. Well, this is great, man. We're going to do another podcast in the near future on how and just get all into the weeds on this stuff. I think we've done some things like that before, but this is a good 30,000-foot view of why, when, where, and who. Hey, guys, if you haven't yet, check out breakinggrowthbarriers.com. That has all the information about the events that we have coming up. We do quarterly one-days and a conference once a year, and we would love to see you there. Thanks.